Hi, welcome to the MemSQL Developer Livestream. Today we're going to look at Storybook. Storybook is a great mechanism to be able to mount your components in an isolated environment and start to tweak with them and understand how they behave without needing to spin up the whole rest of the app. So let's dig in. Here's the Storybook demo page, live examples. We're using Vue, so I pulled up the Vue page, and here's kind of that live experience. So I have a button component, and this one has rounded edges. I can click it, and I can get a feel for how it works. I may be able to modify things with knobs. Knobs are a mechanism to start to play with stuff. So here's John Doe, and I want to say Jane Smith, and that component will update. So I can start to play with props. I can start to play with events. It's really cool to be able to do that. The cool part is that this live example is completely open source, so we can go look at that kitchen sink stories example and go look at exactly how they did all the things. So because we're using Vuetify, there's a little bit of mayhem to get Vuetify to work with Storybook. So there is this Vue CLI plugin Vuetify Storybook, and that gets us going in a really elegant way. So Vue add Vuetify Storybook. I've already run that. Next up, we need to go grab Storybook Vue router for when we're mocking out the router and making that work. So I've already done that just because installing is hard. And let's take a look at what we've got. Let's close down all the things. So we have a new .storybook folder, and there is a dizzying amount of JavaScript code in there to try and pull this off. Not only do we need the regular Storybook content, but we also need to add in all of the Vuetify content. We also have knobs and templates, and it's pretty cool to have all this content, but it's intense. Here in package.json, we have a script to serve Storybook, start Storybook on port 6006. That's usually where it is. Let's change this up a little bit. Storybook serve. And there's one more that is Storybook build. And that one is... I have copied that incorrectly. So let's go look in here and grab Storybook build. Oh, I did get that wrong. So anyway, we're going to need to go figure out what Storybook build is. But now we've got those two commands that will kick that off. And so now we can start to do stuff. Now, because we're using both Vuetify and TypeScript, we need to dig in a little bit more to the TypeScript pieces. So here in the config, that starts us off. Here's the stories directory, and it's currently in our current directory. All else being equal, I kind of want to walk away from the .storybook folder. So let's move the stories out into the main folder. Now we'll need to update this configuration to say it's up one directory. And this is the path to all of our stories. Now we're going to do both JavaScript and TypeScript. And I always forget to do the .stories, or I call it .story or whatever. So we'll just say any JavaScript and TypeScript files in that folder, we want those to be stories. We need to rig up the TypeScript piece. For that, I started Googling the TypeScript details, and here's that magic sauce that we need to add to our web config. So let's go grab that webpack config, rather. Let's go grab those two pieces. And here in the webpack config, we do need a custom webpack, not just the default, because we're doing this pushing the Vue content into place. We'll also add the TS and TSX extensions here. This says use the TS loader to load all TS and TSX things, but also go load all the .vue files and treat them like TypeScript as well. And so that's pretty cool. Now, not only do we have the TypeScript files in our stories folder, as they reference other .vue files, we can grab those too. So here's our example story. And our example story kind of does a whole lot of wandering around. Let's delete that. And oh, we do need to add one more thing though. Here in Storybook, we need to add tsconfig.json. It is a TypeScript root, so there is that. Here in end-to-end tests, we built a tsconfig JSON that just says, hey, go extend the base directory. And so we can do that again. The base URL is up one folder. The tsconfig that we're extending is up one folder. And we're good. We don't need to add any extra content into tsconfig like we needed to do in Cypress to tell it, hey, go run Cypress. All of the Storybook typings came in just fine. So we've got our stories folder moved. We've got TypeScript rigged up. Let's create a new story. New file. Let's test notfound.stories.ts. Okay, export default. And we're going to say component is the not found component. And we need to give it a, is it a description? It is a title. We need to give it a title. Title of components not found. Perfect. Let's pull in our not found component. Import not found from up one directory into the source directory, into the components directory, and let's grab notfound.vue. Cool. npm run storybook serve. Now this is going to go run through that process of grabbing all of the stories, pulling them in, doing the TypeScript build, doing the Vuetify build. So yeah, this takes a minute. The bummer part is as we add new stories, it doesn't automatically pick up the new files. It will catch changed files. So we may be spending a bit of time watching this today. That's totally fine. Okay, we've got Storybook ready to go. It launched on port 6006, and we're good. It looks like it might be having difficulty loading our stories. I'm not sure what Vuetify did here to do bad things, but we do have that one console error. Sorry, but you either have no stories or none are selected somehow. Please check the Storybook config. Okay, let me go look at that. Oh, yes, I haven't created any stories yet. Let's double check the Webpack config. Yep, that looks good. We're missing semicolons everywhere, but that's okay. Here in this config, that's the other one that we modified. Yep, we moved that correctly. So let's go build a story. Now, a story is this mechanism. We export default, we create a title, we create optionally the decorators that we pull in, so we'll use with knobs in time. And then we create these functions that return this thing that has components and template at the bare minimum. So let's do that. Export default unconfigured. I started out calling this default, and apparently naming things default is not a thing. So that was fun. Components. Now in this case, I only have the not found component, but in the template, I have not found. Okay. Let's fire this up. And I'm sure we're going to get another error. Duplicate export default. Export const unconfigured. There we go. Let's refresh this again. Ooh. Function.apply is not a function. What it's mentioning here is that not found doesn't actually do things. In our source here in components in not found, we don't have the export default parts. So let's go grab this from, I don't know, error works. Not found. We don't have a prop anymore. We're just exporting the default object. And now because it's a real component, now Storybook should be able to find it. Ooh, nope. Do I need to restart Storybook? Let's go diff this as well and make sure that I didn't get that. Nope, that's right. This may turn into a very short demo. Okay. Here's our Storybook. Ooh. Nope. fn.apply is not a function. That is weird. F12 at hooks. Show me that again. That is telling me nothing. That is weird. Okay, well, I'm gonna guess that maybe something in one of these files is off. So I'm going to just grab all of the backup files for the Storybook folder and copy. Yes, I would. Cannot resolve Storybook add-on links register. Ah, yes, I did forget to npm install something. Add-on links. npm install save dev add-on links. That would definitely do it. The add-ons here is the list of Storybook add-ons that we pull in. And so docs is interesting, backgrounds is interesting, but we don't need those. Add-on links was installed by default. Add-on knobs, add-on notes. Once we get Storybook going, we'll see how each of those add-ons help us do interesting things. The wonderful and beautifulness of add-ons. Not add-ons, npm install. Arguably, I should switch to Yarn, but I started with Node in the 0.4 days. And so npm was what I got really familiar with. So, that's kind of where my muscle memory is. Yeah, Yarn can be faster in many cases, and npm is also getting really fast as well. So maybe it's fine. Oh, one of the things I've noticed, I'm not quite sure why, but closing out VS Code sometimes helps npm install go faster for no good reason. I suspect it's one of my VS Code plugins. Okay, npm run Storybook serve. Let's see if that works out better. I'm jumping the gun here because it hasn't loaded yet, and actually it'll start up a new one when the time comes. So build, 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 build. I remember builds that were, hours or many hours or an hour. So the fact that we're getting grumpy at 10-second builds is actually kind of hilarious, all else being equal. Okay. Path to our storybook. Ooh, still fail. Vendors main bundle.js. Function.apply. Get story. That is really weird. Yes. Oh, that is hilarious. So, yeah, I wrote this wrong. Not found.stories. This is not a constant, it's a function, and that's why function.apply doesn't work. And this is not an array, it is an object, so that it can use this as the name and also the value. And so now, Webpack rebuilt. We've got Storybook started. That was cool. So here's our not found component. We can take a look at the markup. Here's how we would include that in our page. In this case, it's just showing not found. And hey, that's perfect. Knobs, we don't have any knobs. We don't have any actions. Accessibility, ooh, hey, this works. This is decently accessible. It meets the AA contrast ratio guidelines. That's pretty cool. So, not found. That was a good first go into this. Let's create a new story for the loading.stories.ts. Okay, so starting here with not found, let's swap that over to loading. Loading. Now, loading doesn't have any details to configure. It is just a thing, but we do need to make sure that it actually exports a TypeScript definition. So let's do that. Copy, paste, no. Copy. There we go. Loading. Okay. So we'll get this loading component fired up. Now with not found, we didn't have a whole lot of knobs to configure, but we can take a look at what this component will look like in our application. And what's interesting is we can do all kinds of cool things. Here's color blindness simulations. Here's, oh, there we go, loading. There's our loading component. It has a nice border on all the sides. It's a little bit wide, and it has a Twitter logo on it. Let's see if we can swap that out. Going off to Vuetify, that component looks like it would be a good choice. Let's go grab that progress circular, and we'll set that in place here in our loading component instead of the V icon. And instead of color primary, let's say color is F4, 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 a kind of grayish kind of thing. Ooh, that's really light. Let's step it back. C9, C9, C9. Yeah, that works out pretty well. The spinner and the loading are really close together, so let's add some space. NBSP. And instead of max width 400, let's say max width 175. Actually, instead of max width, let's do it down here. Loading width 175. Yeah, that was cool. We could use Storybook to start to explore our components and tweak them and adjust them in ways that is a little bit difficult to do elsewhere. Now, if we wanted to change the spinner with, I don't know, a different color, or we wanted to be able to pass in the color or the size, or maybe we wanted to switch it out with a horizontal Zen bar, we could definitely do that here in Storybook and just keep poking at it to get at where we need it. That was cool. So next up, let's take the error component out for a spin. Now the error component has a props in it. That's pretty cool. Let's create a new file, error.stories.ts. Starting with loading seems like a good spot to go. Error.stories.ts. We'll change loading to error. Now we've got that unconfigured one. Let's get the rebuild started. But we could also configure it. So let's say configured. Now this has props. Oh, here we're going to need to say status equals 500. And here we can say status equals status. Here we've got a props, so status, and we'll need to give it a default. And default is a number. We'll call this status, and our default will be 500. Now this number actually comes in from the decorators. So let's add decorators with knobs, and that with knobs will come in from, where is it? With knobs will come in from the Storybook add-on knobs. That's where it is. Storybook add-on knobs now gets us with knobs, and that also gets us these other data types. We won't use Boolean and text in this case, but now we have this props, and we have a status, and we can do really interesting things. Let's see if Storybook got us loaded. Yep, 500 error. The system has failed. Try your request again. But now if we have this configured one, there's that status. We can come in here to knobs, and we can say, well, maybe I'd like this to be 400. Now we've got 400 error. That's pretty cool. 300. I wonder if we could customize this message. That might be pretty cool. Here in our error component, we could take in additional props. Let's say message, and message will be of type string. It's not required, but let's give it a default value of the system has failed. Now here we'll show the message. Now we could include this in the message as well, but let's actually do this. Span v show equals show contact support. Span. Now we can do another prop, show contact support. This one is of type Boolean, and the default is true. Now we've tweaked out our component. Let's tweak out our story to be able to do that. So they're optional. In the unconfigured one, we won't send them. But here we'll say message. The default is string, message, and copy and paste. But let's just go grab the original default message, which is pretty cool. The system has failed. Let's also give it a prop for the show contact support. Show contact support, and its default is a Boolean, and it is show contact support, and the default is true. So now we need to pull in string and Boolean. Oh, it's not string, it's text. Text. And now here in Storybook, we can take our component for a spin and tweak it out. So let's go with a 400 or a 418. I am a teapot. And we can hide this. Ooh, it looks like those aren't getting pushed into place. That is because we are not pushing them into place. Let's do this. Let's send the message in that way. And we'll show contact support this way. Now, because we're passing it in as a message, what it is here in the component is it is a slot. So instead of showing message, let's say slot. And now we can say the default is the system has failed. If you're not passing in a slot, then we'll do that. Okay. Firing up our Storybook test. Let's change this to 418. I am a teapot. And we're not going to show the contact support. That was really cool. We could now use knobs to be able to really adjust our Storybook component, our component here in Storybook, and do some really, really cool things. So we got error, loading, and not found. Let's go do one of the hard ones. Let's do product detail. This will be fun. New file, product detail.stories.ts. Now, product detail is going to be a little bit more involved because we've got quite a few things going on in the product detail component. We will use knobs, so let's leave that in place. Let's get Webpack to go find the new file. And now it's not just a product detail. What we're passing in is a product. And that product is, in this case, props product. And we want to send in a default. Here in, as we look at the actions knob, there's mechanisms of passing in defaults like this. Default, where we just give it a function and we give it the value. Let's do that in this case. So default is default product. So instead of having that go figure it out thing, here this default product, const default product is of type product, and it equals this. Product comes in from import product from types, source types product. Now this default product will have interesting things like ID is 123, product code is default, name, I'm just making these up, nothing magical about this. Default product, active is true, description is the default product description, and we'll give it some properties. What is it? Where is it? Yeah, properties. We'll give it some properties. Has JSON. Okay, so now we have our product. Therefore, we can pass in this default product. This one will still do bad things. So For now, let's make it the same. But we'll come back to that to configure it in more ways. Back at Storybook, we've got our product detail component, and here's that unconfigured component. We can see all of the things. It looks like, oh, yeah, default product. Well, we want to do a bunch of stuff with knobs, so let's tweak out the knobs here. Here we want not just a product, but we probably want all of these pieces. So here's all of the props. Nope. Here's all of the props. And we'll say this is ID, product code, name, active, description, properties. Now with each of these, we'll give it a default that is, in this case, a number, ID. The default can be 1, 2, 3. Product code needs a default, and this is text. Product code, here's that default. Our name is default text, name, and there's our default text. Active will be default of Boolean, active, true, description, default is text, and we want to prompt it as a description, and there's the value. Properties is default object, and the value is has JSON. I'm not sure, did we pull in object? We did, perfect. Or VS Code helped us with that. Okay, so now we have a bunch of knobs. The product code is default. Here's our new product. Active doesn't really do anything. We haven't shown that in the interface. The description. I would actually have expected the description to be here, so that's interesting. And we can talk about more properties. And we can see those light up here. That's pretty cool. Well, it may be easier for us to just go through and say, here's a thing with 1, here's a thing with 2. So let's do that as well. I'm going to say has JSON, has many properties. For the unconfigured, that's perfect. For the configured, we can do whatever we need to. And let's add some more that are one property. I'm going to actually grab this one so that we can tweak it out if we want to. But there's one property. Let's actually just grab that whole thing. There we go. One property. Now the default product has just one, but we could say there's just one. Let's say we've got now 2 properties. And here we can do that has many properties. That's cool. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so one property, it just has one property. 2 properties, it now has many. And we can definitely tweak that to fit. But what happens when we add 0 properties? Let's take that for a spin. So this one has no properties. I'm going to default this to null. We could pass in an empty object, and that would definitely be a good test, but let's take a look. No properties. Oh! Cannot convert undefined or null to object. Null or undefined. Let's go look at our product detail component. And here, we're going to do object.entries of product.properties and assume the product.properties has entries. That's a fragile assumption. We just found that problem. Let's say or an empty object. Fire up this test again. And now when we have no properties, we just don't show that. Alternatively, we could have said v show equals product dot properties, or kind of say there are some, and that might be a worthwhile result as well. In time, we might want to make that a computed property so that we can say not blank and not null. Okay, so we got to experience different aspects of our component, and that's exactly what Storybook is for, to be able to go poke at it and get a feel for how that works. That's cool. Next up, let's do the product list. New file, product list dot, oh, not a component, a story. Stories, new file, product list dot stories dot ts. Let's go grab product detail, and we'll just set that in place for now. Product list. Get Webpack to notice that we added a new story. And now let's change product detail to product list. Now the product list component doesn't take a product, it takes products. And we're going to say default products. Well, default products is now a product array. So not only do we want this one, but we also want this one in our array. So maybe this one is product code product 1. And this one is 2. And so now in our unconfigured, we go grab that list of products and away we go. Here in the configured, that's going to get more complicated. Let's set that one aside for now. One property, or rather one product, we'll have this product list. Here's our products. And here we can say products, the default is that function that yields one product. So default products 0. Okay, so now we only have one product in the list. We could grab 2 products. So let's grab this test, and this one is 2 products. Now we just have our regular default products list. And let's also do one with no products. No products. And this is just going to yield an empty list. We'll clean out some of these. Product list. Here's unconfigured. Ooh, products. We're not showing the products at all. So unconfigured looks like it's not passing in the products correctly. I suspect it's a spelling mistake. Oh, haha, it's this. Products. There we go. So unconfigured shows us two things. One product, we only see one in the list. That's perfect. Two products, we now see the two. And then no products, here's that list that is completely empty. Do we want to show not found? Well, in our logic, in our view, we actually swap it out with this view. But maybe it might be worth reevaluating that and taking a look at, do we want to show something different here? So we can still interact with this. Here's the action. And as we click through, oh, actually, I'm surprised that it's not showing up the actions there. It's not actually doing anything, but we do get to experience how this works, and that's really cool. One of the other things that we can do in Storybook is we can change our screen size. So here's small mobile or large mobile, tablet. On tablet, it looks pretty good. On large mobile, we see that the picture goes off the edge. And on small mobile, even more so, the picture goes off the edge. So really what we'd like to do with this image is to say something like max width 100% and have that go fit in its box. Okay, so now that we understand what we need to do to tweak this component, let's go look at that product detail component, and we'll look at that image, classes image. And so here in the image, we can say max width 100%. So our story looks great here. Let's switch to small mobile. It still looks great. Large mobile, that looks good. We could switch to landscape if we wanted to look at landscape view. That's a smidge hard to see here, so let's go this way. There's a landscape, there's portrait, and we see that that picture is going to stay the way we expect. That's pretty cool. We got to take a look at Storybook. Storybook is a great way to put our components in isolation so that we can start to explore them. We used it to find a bug in our component where it wasn't able to handle no properties. We used it to be able to tweak our component in interesting ways with knobs to be able to put things up and put things down. We got to see with loading that it really wasn't visually appealing, so we got to tweak it to make some adjustments. We got to see that in the detail screen as well. And so Storybook is a great way not to run unit tests per se, though we definitely could rig just to use our stories as its test bed, but rather for us as visual designers and as interface experts to be able to tweak that experience to definitely make it effective for our users. Storybook is a great addition to our app. Next up, let's look at, next week rather, let's look at doing some CRUD data on our product catalog. And in particular, we'll start off by rigging up a new microservice that allows us to authenticate using Passport. So join us next week for the MemSQL Developer Livestream. Thanks for joining us.